not just today, but after. In the mean, so let's see, we have the starts streaming now. We're going to share the screen, and we are in business. Perfect. So let's continue. So what we have again, so we have the CSS, we have some styles that we build. So what I'm going to do now is that with the understanding of what we have on screen right now, I'm going to go ahead and copy a few things from my my other editor and then just paste them right here. As a matter of fact, let's just leave P1 and .1. I'm going to go and just replace again, replace one with the body. So we'll have body at the bottom, H1, H2, and paragraph. So let's go ahead and look at what that looks like right now. Let's go ahead and launch the live editor, and we'll go ahead and start asking a few questions. So here's what we have. We have a few things. We have added some styling for the body, for H1, H2, and the paragraphs. The attributes that we're modifying are very basic. We're still dealing with the ones that we use on a regular basis. We're modifying the font family. So our paragraphs all have the font family of monospace. They all have a font size of 16, a line height of 24. H1 has a preset font size of 40, and H2 has italics. So we see that our subheadings are kind of just like leaning to the right-hand side. One of your peers asked, well, I was looking at the margin attribute, and I noticed that you did the following. You did 0 pixels, auto, and then 0 pixels. Why is that? How come the previous one, the prior definition that was on the screen said 0 and auto, and the one that you currently have on the screen says 0 pixels, auto, and then 0 pixels? Anybody knows the answer to that? No? So here's what we're going to do. The way we're going to do this is as follows. We're going to pick up one of those elements. Let's just go ahead and keep picking on P.1. We're going to give P.1 a custom margin. Now, why I say a custom margin is because we're going to define that ourselves. But when I say custom, it means that it by default, if we look at the inspector, the paragraph already has a margin of its own. We just got to figure out which one is it. So here we go. We look at the paragraph right here. And if you look down here in this little box, or the box model, we see a few things that we can appreciate. What we see there is we see margin, and we see a number 16, and then one at the bottom. We see the word border, basically how thick will be the border of that object itself. And then we also see another attribute called padding. The hierarchy in which these attributes are laid out is exactly the way they're displayed in this screen. The margin is an attribute that is used for like outbound of the element. It kind of pushes you away from surrounding elements. The border, every element that it's there, it's sitting on top of what you can consider a two-dimensional plane, and then it kind of creates a border around them. But the web is not two-dimensional. The web is actually three-dimensional. You can stack objects on top of each other, and there's something called the C-index that allows you to do that. You will eventually get there. That kind of becomes more of an advanced topic and something that you will have to deal with that later down the road when you start kind of like putting a lot of graphics and things on top of each other. You start asking yourself, hey, this is not displaying correctly, probably because you need to kind of alter the C-index on the page itself. So here's the answer to why we're doing the margin attribute differently from time to time. So here's the thing. There's 4 values, the margin and padding, border, and yeah, that's that, right? So margin, border, and padding, all 3 have 4 values. They have the value that will go on the top, they have the value that will go on the right, they have the value that will go on the bottom, and then they have a value that goes on the left. In theory, you should define each one of these attributes with 4 values. You should explicitly state the margin to be something like the following. You should say margin. I can say the top margin will be 10 pixels. I can then say the right margin is going to be 50 pixels. The bottom margin is going to be something outrageous, like 150. And then the left margin will just be 5 pixels. And then if I, again, enable the live preview, the reason why the live preview breaks is that every time you load out the inspector, kind of brackets just disconnects, and it tells you, hey, you're on your own now. You're troubleshooting on your own. You don't need us. So we go to this page, and now we have this this paragraph, same paragraph. So it looks a little bit different. What we have here is we have the paragraph being affected by these 4 values. The values, again, are being read. Top value goes first, right value goes second, bottom, third value is the bottom, and then the one on the left is the very last one. I mean, can you guys see that clearly on the screen? You guys you get to see the orange block. We get to see that the first value is 10, so basically we're kind of going away from concentration. On the right-hand side, we have a margin of 50, so you can definitely see the gap between here to the edge of the body. And then we have a margin of 150, so we're pushing everything below us, 150. And then on the right-hand side, it's kind of hard to tell, but there is a 5-pixel gap between them, right? So that is supposed to be the formal notation, but no one's ever going to write that whole thing because it just takes a lot of time. So instead, we love to take shortcuts. Shortcuts can be done very simple. If your value if you're kind of repeating a number, you can do top, then the middle value will be repeated for left and right. So auto will be the value that will be used on the left and on the right, and then 0 will be on the top and 0 explicitly on the bottom. If all your margins are the exact same value, then all you gotta do is just remove all the numbers, and then you're left with 150 pixels margins all around. Right? That's basically when there's only a single value. If you have, again, 2 values, the first one is, sorry, 10x is not a proper syntax. So first value will be added for top and bottom. Second value will be from left and right. Correct? Hopefully that answered your question, right? You were asking if, what will happen if I just do auto everywhere? If you do auto everywhere, it kind of just, sometimes it just doesn't put it right in the middle. So we can just go here and just put auto. And then sometimes, depending on the browser, it might not do it. The other thing is that the body actually has an inherent margin, so you kind of just want to close that gap and just make it 0, so you're completely flush to the top of the browser itself. But yes, so here we are. We basically completed step 3. We have done everything we wanted to do. We have added our pseudo inline CSS. And the reason why I say pseudo inline CSS is because we're still working with a single file and all the content still here. Now, one last thing that we're going to do here before we go is the following. We're going to go back to our header 1, and we're going to look at another attribute. So this is the element called h1. We have an attribute called class. We give this guy a name. This name is completely arbitrary because it doesn't mean anything until there's some sort of matching CSS that goes with it. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to add another attribute called style. Style is basically inline CSS. It allows me to define something right then and there. So what are we going to define now? We're going to define the following. We're going to go back to background, and I'm going to say, OK, I would like to change the background to green. And as soon as I finish typing this, you guys will notice that in the hierarchy of CSS, things have actually changed. In the file, we have that P1 was supposed to be one color, was supposed to be orange, and then we have 1 to be red. But then in line, we define this to be green. And again, because of the different weights on how the cascading rules are displayed, or they should be evaluated, then the one that wins is definitely the one that's in line. So here's a question for everybody. If you're working on a website and somebody has an inline definition, can you override that? The answer is yes, you can. It's not the way you want to do this because it makes working with the web a little harder. But yes, you can override it. There's just one more thing that you can do is add the important flag on it. You don't want to get there because then everybody starts putting the important flag on it, and then the rules get evaluated in the exact same way. So the hierarchy goes external CSS files, internal CSS files defined on the top of the document. Everything will be trumped by inline, like it's the case in this document. And if you put the little important flag, you can start trumping any of them. But if you have important in all the same steps, then it kind of cycles through one more time. So if somebody has the word important right next to this guy, it kind of makes it almost impossible to override, at least with just CSS alone. Come in with some JavaScript and some dynamic code, then you can do anything. You can rewrite an entire page just by using code. So yeah, so here's where we are. We've done some work. Now let's go ahead and keep going. So here we go back to our Finder. We'll just go ahead and copy. You guys have the finalized version that I submitted. So the one that I'm building here is going to be slightly different. So we're going to keep on this. We're going to continue with these ugly colors. So that way we can always reference back what we've done. So here on version 4, we have the same file. So we're left with red, green, orange. Actually, not really, because it didn't save right before. So let me just fix that again. Duplicate the file, call platform. Perfect. So here's the file. What we're going to do next is actually very simple. We're going to create a folder inside of the number 4, step number 4. And we're going to create a file. We're going to create 2 folders in here. One folder for CSS. And then we're going to create yet another folder for images. So what we're attempting to do here in this step is the following. We're attempting to start linking external files. Everything that we've done up to this point has to be, we've been dealing with definitions inside of the same document. Now what we would like to do is we would like to start bringing external images and documents. So for the images, I had already downloaded this picture from the game. So this is basically what the game will look like. We have the area where you play, and then of course each one of the cards has a matching pair. So I'm going to go and grab that, drop it here in images. So it's already available. And then I'm looking at my code right there. And then what I'm going to do next is just basically add a brand new element into the website to reference that file. That element is going to be of type EMG. That's basically short for image. So we're going to say here, open up an image. In there, we're going to do source. And we're going to tell the website where to find this file. Brackets is smart enough to tell you, hey, relative to where I am inside of this folder called step number 4, I have 2 subfolders inside of me. One of them called CSS, one of them called images. You can actually pick one of them and then say, well, I would like to get one of my assets from that folder. So say images, and then from there it tells you, hey, there's only one file called game.png. We're going to go ahead and select that file, close that tag, and then eventually go back to our preview, which may or may not be working. And then here it is. So here's what we have so far. We have our website with a title. We have a first paragraph that's terribly positioned on screen. And then right next to that, we have our first image. So the image is actually sitting right there. But it seems to be way bigger in relation to everything else that we have on the site. So how are we going to fix this? We're going to go and apply some styles to it and just going to make the picture a bit smaller. The way we're going to do this is we're going to do this slightly different. We're not going to use CSS, and the reason why is because some elements in the document object model actually allow you to modify some attributes directly from the element itself. Image is actually one of them. If you go to the image object element, you can actually type in width, and it actually tells you, hey, it actually allows you to modify the width of the picture itself. So here we go. We define the width to be 500. We have our image exactly fitting that 500 width that we set up for the body. You guys agree? So it seems to be working better. Now, I could have done that with CSS as well, but I'm just kind of showing you a different way of doing this. You guys can definitely use some inline attributes to modify certain objects. Certain objects, again, such as images, and then sometimes iframes. So if you're embedding another picture, another website inside of here, you can also change the width of it. Now let's go ahead and try that let's try that here on the paragraph. So if I actually start typing W to fill in the word width, you will notice that the editor doesn't know what we're talking about. The editor is smart enough to tell us, hey, that's not a valid attribute for a paragraph. Once again, that's why we want to use editors most of the time. It kind of helps us double check that what we're doing is right. I could always just copy and paste that attribute in there and then say, you know what, I really want this width to be 100, save that file, reload my page 100 times, and I will notice that nothing's actually happening. The reason why is because that attribute doesn't affect the element itself. So we've seen multiple ways of modifying and styling the web. I mean, we definitely know that we can do that with a little bit of CSS, and we can do that also with different attributes depending on the object that we're working. So let's just go ahead and clean up this up a little bit. Let's just go ahead and get rid of this. We're just making our page look nicer. So we have that. Go ahead and get rid of that. Let's go ahead and get rid of the green. So we're going to take out that inline style. We'll leave the class. That is definitely not hurting us. We're just going to go ahead and leave that there. Next up, what I would like to do is I would like to go ahead and reference then an external CSS file. So if you guys notice on the very top of the document, when we brought this file from Thimble, there was a tag called link. And this link says, hey, this is a type of style sheet, and this is the file that I would like to reference called style.css. This file should be in your web server, so I can go ahead and load it up. If we look at the live preview, first of all, I can go into the live preview and say inspect. One of the things that I will notice is that every time I reload my page, there is one error on this document. One of the nice things about the inspector, not only helps you learn more about the elements, it helps you understand what attributes are available to you, it actually points out your mistakes. It tells you, hey, what's currently wrong with this website? What's wrong with this website right now? We don't know. We know that there's one error right there. We actually see that on the top right corner if you're using, again, if you're using Chrome, or if you see it right here on the console, if you're looking at it, the console will actually tell me, hey, I'm having a hard time finding this file. I'm trying to get from the web server on step 4, the file called style.css. Currently, that file doesn't exist, thus creating an error for us. So what we'll do is we'll fix this problem really quick. I'm going to go to step 4, and inside of that folder, I'm going to go and add a file. To that file, I'm going to go and just rename that and then say here, so rename style.css. Now, after I've done that, just create an empty file, reload my page. I notice the error goes automatically away. Does it mean that do I have to add anything to that file for it to be valid? No. The browser is only looking at the resources available. It's looking, hey, you pointed me out in the direction of a file called style.css. The question is does the file exist? If file exists, then I'm done. I don't have to do anything else. We are compliant. File can be empty. That's basically what we're looking at right now. File works just fine. Now, let's go ahead and grab this file. And what we'll do is the following. I'm going to go and grab that. I'm going to grab some some snippet of code that I wrote prior. I'm going to just drop that in here. So notice in here, we have some definitions again, very simple: body, h1, h2, paragraph, and image. Notice the image has a margin. And I'm going to go and grab the file. I'm going to move it from styles. I'm going to move it from its current location, and I don't think I can do that in brackets. So I'm just going to go here on the actual operating system. I'm going to grab that from right next to the file and drop that inside of CSS. So now the file's in a different folder. Just keep changes in editor. So now the editor understands that, hey, the file has been moved. Or not. Maybe he doesn't know that. No, he has no idea that happened. So let's, and then here, just remove the file. So we're going to put the file inside of CSS, the CSS folder. We're going to call that styles.css. We're going to reload the page one more time, and we notice that the error shows up once again. So what we're going to do is we're going to tell the markup, listen, we made a few changes. What we would like to do is just kind of notify you and let you know, hey, that file is no longer in adjacent to the document. It's going to be in a folder called CSS, and then the name of the file. Once we do this, we reload the page, and then our page has been modified. Now, here's what we have. We loaded an external CSS file, and only a few things changed. We noticed that with this document loaded, the image actually has, hold on. Keep forgetting that I break the live preview every time I open up the inspector, so let's just do it like this. So here's what we have. Without the external CSS file, this is what the website looks like, right? We have the title, we have the name, the text, we have the image that we embedded. And then what we're going to do is we're going to uncomment this line of code, and then we're going to see the following. We should see or we don't see. Oh, what happened here? Is this? Okay, let's do this again. All right, third time's the charm. Without the CSS, the external CSS loaded, we have the image very adjacent to the paragraphs. Once we uncomment the line and the live preview is actually working, you guys will notice that the picture actually pushes the text around, correct? So that's what we're doing there. We're actually just telling the external CSS is just forcing a few more things with us. The other thing that we have in this step is basically kind of getting ready to work with external fonts. The reason why I say we're getting ready to work with external fonts is simply because if you look at the file, we have our headers are having a different font family. This font family is coming from Google Fonts. It tells us, hey, we're looking for different fonts that are not available right out of the gate from the browser. You guys have to go ahead and load them. So we're keeping monospace for the paragraph, but we are adding the Roboto font to our headers. And how do we do that? The way we do that is we can always go to Google Fonts. So we just Google Fonts, go right to the link, and then in here, just basically start picking any of the fonts that you like. We can pick Roboto. So let's just go and search here, Roboto. And if you guys see, there's a few of them. We're going to pick default one. We're going to pick this guy. I believe for here, I picked whatever. Let's just leave this two. Once you pick the fonts that you guys like, Google Fonts actually provides to you a link directive. It tells you, hey, if you would like to use these fonts, all you got to do is copy this definition that's here, right at the bottom. It tells you, hey, would you like to use those fonts? Grab this style sheet that's being hosted in Google's servers. Go to your file, drop that in here, and then eventually your fonts will actually change. Now, how do we know that the fonts change? Well, that's actually quite simple. We're going to comment out that line. Without that line, this is what the current text looks like. Add the fonts, and they've changed. Wasn't that much of a drastic change. I know you guys are not really impressed, but calligraphy is actually very important on the web, so people try to pick up fonts that are easy to read. People are familiar with them. So what we're doing is just basically loading external fonts and having CSS kind of define them. So this is the CSS that's defining them. So what's happening in this part of the demo is the following. We have a mixture between CSS that's in the document, right? So embedded in the single document, and then CSS that's actually being loaded from an external source. The outcome is actually what we see on the screen. We see that both files merge simply because some definitions are missing in one location and they're actually found in another file. So things like the font family is not available on the first page. It's actually on the CSS file. But if you guys notice, the size of the header one is actually the same on both. So even though you're redefining it, the system's just going to use that rule to supersede and then say, well, it seems like you really want that font to be 40 pixels. We'll just keep that there. So there's no problems in keeping the font the same. Great. So let's go ahead and move on. So for step 5, and I think that's all I did in step 4 was just add those few things. So what I'll do for step 5 is the following. On step 5, all I wanted to introduce to you guys is the notion of a navigation. So here we are on step 5. Our website looks exactly the same, right? So we're making sure that it's actually the live preview. So if we remove the text, the title, it actually shows up. What I would like to do now is I would actually like to go back to Wikipedia and kind of just point out a few things, right? So on Wikipedia, we're looking at the game, and you quickly see that there's a brief description of what the game is all about, and then there's like a table of contents, right? So we get to see this content, and we get to see there's rules, solitaire, strategy, variations, references, external links, blah, 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 blah. Sometimes some of these documents have lots and lots of sections. So what I would like to do is I would like to create my own navigation. To do this, we're going to introduce a set of new elements that we haven't touched just yet. What we'll do is we'll add the navigation right underneath the header. Here's the header. We're going back to our preview. Remember what we did at the beginning? It doesn't matter if you add a lot of empty spaces, they really don't take effect onto the website. So I can have as many empty spaces, nothing really changes. But we're not really styling them, they just kind of get suppressed. So what we'll do here is we'll do the following. We'll do a nav, which is followed by an unordered list. And using emit, we can actually just create very quick HTML by just kind of using directives, using the HTML selectors. The HTML selectors kind of follow suit to the way we were writing CSS. So you can say this is the element, maybe there's a class, maybe there's another element inside of it. So if at any given point in time, I would like to give my list some sort of style, I can say, well, look inside of any navigation element, inside of any unordered list, and any list item. If you find any of those, please make sure to have those background yellow. If that's the case, then the color will change, and then they will eventually show up on the screen. Currently, at the moment, there's no list elements, so nothing is actually of that color. But using emit, we can actually just grab the exact same definition, go back to the editor, and then say nav is greater than unordered list, which is greater than li. And using kind of this hierarchy, saying there's going to be a list element inside of an unordered list, which is inside of a navigation. And if you do this, then we've created the exact HTML markup. So instead of having to type everything by hand, emit just allows you to do quick shortcuts. Thankfully enough, these shortcuts are easy to remember simply because they match exactly CSS rules. If you're being very specific about your CSS, you can say any element that's inside of this object, that's inside of another one, I want that one to be of a particular color. This is how you will match that rule. You can also create markup with the exact same instructions. So here we go. We're going to do the following. We're going to follow suit with what's in Wikipedia. I can't really copy that. So here we go. We're just going to go here, rules. I don't know if it's faster just to type it or just to copy and paste. So here we go. Rules, solitaire, and strategy. Now, if we go back to our live preview, what we should see is we should see an unordered list or bullet points, as we've seen on many, many websites before. And now we have a list of objects, right? So we have this. We're going to use these elements to create a navigation. So far, that's what we have. We have an unordered list, and each one of the elements inside creates a bullet point. And then it basically kind of creates just a list. There's a break right after the end of each one of those, and we have 3 of them. Now, if I change this unordered list, and I want to give you a different example, if I grab the exact same syntax, and instead of just using unordered list, I change that to an O, the behavior changes on the web, on the page itself. Markup-wise, they're not that different. They're just one character away. You replace the O with the U, or the U with the O, but visually they're completely different. You have one with bullet points, the other one is ordered. We can label them with numbers, with Roman numerals. We can do this with many, many different ways. Now, do you guys like the navigation like that? Does it make any sense just yet? No? All right. So what we'll do now is we'll add, basically we're going to jump on the page. We're going to be able to create links on that website. We want to make sure that if we're looking at our site and we have this as a basic table of contents, bless you, we want to make sure that we can jump to the section that we're looking for. So here we go. We have our navigation. We have an unordered list. And in here, we want to make sure that every time we click in any of these guys, we jump to the section that interests us. The first time we're going to do this without JavaScript, so we're going to use it with native HTML, with native markup. And the way we're going to do this is actually quite simple. First thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to actually style this a little better. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say margin. I'm just going to space these guys up just a little bit. There you go. So that's what I want. I want to make sure that they're not really touching each other. And I think the yellow was nice for a little bit, but we can take that off. We don't need to highlight it. So here we go. Here's what the website looks like. Now, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for the behavior that when I click on this link, it points me to the right section on that website. So how do I do this? First approach is we have to create a link, right? To create a link, basically an anchor, there's the anchor tag, so we'll just open up here, we'll say A, and it basically, brackets kind of just opens and closes right away, so we're just gonna drop that in there. If I create an anchor tag, does it change anything on the website? Do we see any difference in the site? No, it seems to be the exact same thing. Now, the element is there, it's not really changing anything, but as soon as you tell him, hey, there's a property called href, and you can point this to any website, so I can say http://google.com. Now, notice that my website actually changed. It now is highlighting that as a link. It's an active link that basically has the ability to take you somewhere. Click that link, and it takes me to google.com. Works. Fairly simple, right? You guys agree? It's actually very, very, very straightforward demo. Let's go ahead and keep going. Let's try to make this a little more interesting. What we're going to do next is we're actually going to try to make the same behavior, but instead of going somewhere else, again, live preview breaks every time you try to do anything outside of the regulations. So here we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on rules, and we actually want to scroll all the way down to where the rules are. Again, the reason why we made this page kind of narrow is so that we can appreciate the scroll and go all the way to the bottom of the file. If it was very broad and we can see that on a single page, there will be no need to scroll. So again, we're going to try to see if we can make this happen. What we're going to do, first off, is we're going to make sure that all of them are anchor tags. So we're going to copy the same code, put it in solitaire and strategy, make sure that they're all anchor tags. So now they're all there. Notice that we left the href, but we left that empty. What that tells me is that if you click it, some behavior should happen, and we're just going to show that right now. If you click it, basically it reloads the same page. If you don't define a destination, the assumption is that you're just basically reloading the page. But that's not what we want. We actually want to go somewhere on our page. And to do that, we're actually going to add on our header 2s, we're going to add a special property. So this property is called the ID. And this is one of the main selectors. So when we're looking at CSS, there were 3 ways of doing this. One was with elements, the second one was with classes, and the third one's with IDs. I did mention that IDs are supposed to be unique, and this is one of the main reasons why IDs are meant to be unique. And that is because if I want to point something to a section, to a part of my website, and 2 things are called the same name, the website's only going to go to one of them. It's never going to go scroll to the second one, because if they both have the same name, the browser has to pick only one of them. The browser cannot interpret, well, Jay Doe clicked on it the first time, so that means that he wants to go to the upper section of the file, but then he clicked on it the second time, so now he wants to go to the bottom part of the file, or maybe he double-clicked really quick, and that was the kind of the secret knock to go to the bottom of it. It doesn't work like that. So the links, that's why IDs have to be unique, and this is one of the basic examples on how to get this done. So here we go, we're in H2, we're going to type in ID equals, and we're just going to give it the same name. So we're going to say this section is basically the one for rules. We're going to give this ID rules. Kind of catchy, right? ID rules? No, bad joke. All right, sorry. Perfect, let's go ahead again and do this for solitaire and one more time for strategy. Whoops. Now, usually these things, there's nothing wrong in keeping them with uppercase, but just kind of by default, all of these IDs and classes, they tend to be in lowercase, so we're going to leave that lowercase. Now, on the website itself, nothing seems to have changed. It seems like all of the changes that we're making haven't taken effect, right? So nothing's there. So here's usually the part where my boss will walk around and ask me, Herman, how's that progress on that website? And I'll be like, we're doing great, boss. And then she'll go like, all right, show me. And I'll be like, oh, here, just go to login.fiu.edu. And then I'm like, you know, I've been working really hard for like 5 days straight. I'm adding all these new features. We're going to ask the students all these questions. We're going to revalidate their phone number, their recovery email, their 2-factor. And she's like, well, I don't see anything. I mean, it's looked the same since last year. I mean, what are you doing? I mean, I pay you, and yet, you know, it looks the same. And I'm like, well, it's a lot of work behind it. You just can't see it, right? So like, on the first week of development, you don't even need a week. In the first 2 hours of development, you get so much stuff done, right? Because everything is kind of coming to life. Everything's showing right on the page. But then after that, there seems to be a really fast decline in productivity. So you think, right? So does everybody else think. So does my mom think. She's like, what do you do when you go to work? And I'm like, I make websites. And then she looks at them. She's like, they're so boring. And I'm like, well, you know, there's a lot of work in the background. Trust me, it's not just one little box that takes a username and a password. There's a lot of, intellectual property behind this page. So yes, people do think that we're not moving forward, but yes, we are. We're getting there. Just you can't really see it. That's actually what happens in the market behind it. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to show you that we are here in the page, and do notice we've been working. We're 5 steps in, and we haven't even changed the title. So it still says made with Thimble. So let me just copy here and then just change the title back to concentration. So yeah, we just change the title. So that way on the tab it just looks right. So what we do is we added those IDs, which are not really noticeable on the page itself, but they're going to become very important once we tell the links that if we add a £. So here we're going to just add the % or hashtag, and we're going to say rules. And then now the link again has changed. Now the reason why the link has changed, now do notice one of the links is purple-ish. I don't know, that's kind of a magenta color. I don't know, depends on how you see it. The other one is blue. Do you know the difference between them? Sure, you guys have, no? What is the difference between them? Well, they're both active. I mean, they both work. One has been clicked, the other one hasn't. And there's actually CSS that deals with that. There's actually CSS that you can use, and it tells you if a link has been viewed, change the color. And that's basically kind of added by the browser itself. The browser already knows in the browser history that you click on that there in that link before, but because we changed the destination, he's like, I'd never been to hashtag rules, never been there. So because of that, he puts it in the blue color. So we're going to click in hashtag rules, and then eventually, boom, just like that, we get to the bottom of the page. Right? It kind of seems like we had to click in there twice. The reason why we had to click there twice is because since we are on the live preview for brackets, every time you kind of highlight something, brackets kind of tells you, hey, this is what the source code looks like for what you're clicking. So, don't be afraid of saying like, oh, maybe the click doesn't work. It's simply because brackets is trying to point out, hey, this is the section that you're working on right now. And then when you click on it, it actually takes effect into the current action. So if we want to apply the exact same behavior to the other ones, we'll just add a hashtag to the other two. So we'll have solitaire, and then we also have strategy. And there we go. And then if we reload the page, again, those became blue because we have never been there before. So there we go. We can scroll all the way to solitaire, and then we can scroll all the way to strategy. Notice that when it scrolls, it uses the object that has that class as the upper boundary. So strategy, this guy over here, he's an H2, and because it's margin, he has a little bit of space, or he has a little bit of a gap on the top. If we go back to strategy, you'll notice that the margin is not taken into account. It's actually where the physical object starts. So when the object starts, that's where it scrolls. So now we have a website that has some sort of a navigation, and it basically kind of tells us a quick article on this game of concentration. How are we doing? Still too boring? Get a thumbs up from somebody on the right-hand side. Hashtag, all right, cool. So we're getting there. Perfect. So let's go ahead and keep on working with this. I think that should be enough for step number 5. I don't believe I did anything else on the other one, so we'll just kind of keep them side by side. So once again, let's just save this document and duplicate the file. So now we'll go to 6. So now we are on step number 6. And in step number 6, we're going to do something new. What we're going to do, and actually I should have said this in step number 5, is that the navigation tag is relatively new. Although throughout the years of web design, everybody's been using divs, because this is just basically kind of a generic placeholder, a block of content that can be used for generic purposes. Users will define in div, and then inside of it, they will put in their navigation. So mostly everybody on the web, they will have at some point in time, they'll have a div of class nav. Everybody. It was so popular that when they were talking about CSS5, they're like, you know what? Everybody's using a nav. Why don't we just create an object called nav and just make it easy for everybody, right? At that point, they changed the living document, the specification, and they added this navigation element. At the same time, they also added a few new elements, such as the header, footer, and they also added one called section. And what a section is just basically just like a div. It's a general purpose block of code, but it's supposed to separate areas of your document. So in a section, so if you're writing, maybe if you're writing your dissertation, if you're doing your PhD, maybe you're writing a blog about yourself, and you have different entries. Each one of those entries can be considered a section. The reason why we have sections is because inside of each section, it is completely acceptable to have yet another H1, meaning that there's a header, a main header for that one block of code. So kind of a section kind of just tells you, hey, this is a completely different area if you want to treat it like that, or it's just one element that just to help you differentiate your code, so you don't have to use div, 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 div every time you write the site. You can mix and match different elements on your site, so you can use the new ones like, hey, I would like to have a navigation called that nav. I would like to have this section of my game called rules. I'm going to drop everything inside of the section element. So let's just go ahead and do that. So we're going to grab everything from these H2 going down. I'm going to grab that and then just drop that inside of a section. So there it is. I'm going to create another section here, and I'm going to grab everything from solitaire, drop that in there. So that's right here in the middle. And if I'm not mistaken, that is everything I ended up doing for step 6. I actually don't remember doing anything else. Oh, actually, I take it back. I actually did make some changes. I'm looking at the other file, the one that's finished. So what we have here, again, we have the section. So we introduced a new element. We can take this piece of code away from it with the comment we no longer need. So we have our document, still looks very similar. What we would like to do is we would like to kind of edit our navigation. Our navigation looks very dull. It seems like it's just bullet points. What we'd like to do is we'd like to have it like, I don't know, let's just say maybe if you're in Google and you can search, I don't know, web. You see this navigation over here, they have like, do you want to look at all the articles, just the news? Maybe you want to look at the videos, images, or books, anything about the web. It's a nice little horizontal navigation. That's ultimately what I'm looking for. I'm going to go and start building that. And to do that, I'm going to go back to my CSS and start working on that right now. So I'm going to open up the CSS. I'm going to do this in split view. So I'm going to put the CSS right at the bottom, and then the markup will be on the top. So here's what we have. We have the body, H1, paragraphs, and images. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is I'm going to do the following. I'm going to remove this guy right here, and we'll add the navigation here on the external CSS. So first of all, so this is the one. So here's what we'll do. First of all, I would like to remove that little dot, right? It looks okay if I'm doing a list, but if I want like to have this in a horizontal view, it will kind of make no sense. It will be like all horizontals with like little bullets. So I would like to just go and remove that. To do that, again, I'm going to go and address the CSS by just saying nav, an order list, and then list item. Make that a little bigger so everybody can see. And I'm going to go ahead and find out, how do I remove this from the list, right? How do I remove that little dot? Anybody knows how to do that? So if I have no idea what I'm doing, of course, the best thing that anyone can do is Google, right? So how to remove dot on li CSS, right? So let's see if that actually works. It will actually tell you, hey, how to remove the black dots from an li and ul. So here should be the answer. We kind of Google it, and then we see a new attribute. We see list style type none. What do you guys think? Will this work? Well, if we don't know, why don't we just go ahead and give this a shot? Which is basically how web development goes. You are stuck in a problem, you drop in a piece of code that you Googled, and then you're like, yes, next, moving on. Probably I'm going to have to do this recursively, ask Google for every further question that I have on my project. But that's just, the nature of the business. A lot of the times we're going to have to do this, so don't feel bad if you don't know what the next step is. You're just going to have to go with it, and then if you know how to Google and ask the right questions, the answers will be easily accessible. Otherwise, you'll just Google has this, and I have this theory of one of my classes. I tell them, hey, Google's going to be your best friend. I don't really have a book. I just tell you, go out there and Google. But here's the thing with Google. Google's going to be either your best friend or your worst nightmare. Reason being is because Google's really good at linking you to other files, but those files might lead you in the wrong direction. So you might be going in circles for 3 hours, and then to realize that the first link was actually the correct one. So trust me, we've all been there. So you just got to make sure that you really learn how to ask the right questions. Google will be more than happy to provide all the right answers. So moving along, what we'll do is we'll do the following. We'll just grab a piece of code that has already been written before, and I'm just going to remove this and apply the following style. So what have we done here? What we've done here is we tell in DLI to remove that style. Do notice one thing right here. They're not exactly the same. So the one that we're doing together is the one above, the one that's highlighted. This is what we found in Google. It says list style type colon none. And then on the one that I wrote, it says list style is equals to none. Then display inline padding, and then on the next one I say the anchor text or the links, the color should be black. So don't start changing into blue or magenta. The decoration should be none. Basically remove that little underline that's there. And then when you hover, so there's our pseudo selector. So if you hover over the link, just show me that they're underlined. Correct? So we can just keep adding attributes over and over again. But let's talk about this one for a minute. List style. One says list style type. The other one says list style. What about both of them? Do they both complete the same task? I mean, can I remove the little dot on both using either one? I mean, is one better than the other? What do you guys think? It depends on your preference. It does. One of them is just more explicit than the other. The one that's more explicit is the one that says list style type. That's actually addressing the type. There's only one type. It's either with a dot or without the dot. I don't even know what the other options are, but let's see. So if I remove that comment here and I say, why are you still, okay. Oh, what? No, either the computer died or battery. Oh, that's awesome. No, it's still dead. I mean, it's still there. Wow, that's really weird.
Here, let's plug you into the back.
No, it was. I have no idea why it just went dark. Huh? No, I mean it was actually charging. It was 80%. I just no idea why I just decided to go black screen on it.
Was messing with the server stuff.
Wow. Okay, we're still here and it's still broadcasting. All right, that was really bizarre. Just. Whew. All right, great. And so let's do this really quick. What we'll do is we'll just Google really quick what list style type is. It'll probably take you to a W3 Schools example, and it'll tell you, hey, these are all the options that you have. You have squares, you have circles, uppercase Roman, lower alpha, Hebrew. I mean, these are all the values that you could potentially have. If you ever have any questions, of course, Google will be your best friend. All of this will apply. Now, here's a good one. What if I use the word decimal here? So I'm going to go and just type in decimal. I'm going to comment the one up below. Go back to my website. I don't even know if this is the one that's loaded. Let's just see. So let's look at this. You guys remember that we did a difference between ordered list and unordered list? You guys remember that? So when we did an unordered list, we got the dot. But when we did the ordered list, we got numbers. But here's the thing. I can force an unordered list to have any type of bullet, and one of those can be numbers. So is it always right to use an ordered list? Or can I use an unordered list and then modify it to my convenience? Depends on what you're doing, but at the end of the day, with styles, you can override most of the attributes. So as a matter of fact, you can put custom images inside of your list. So if you want like a little arrow that's a PNG, you can actually import your own PNG. So it doesn't matter which one you use, if it's OL or UL, or ordered list and unordered list, you can always just step on them. You can actually import images. So when we're talking about how explicit this type is, it's simply because we also have the ability to do another example that we'll use in a minute. It's called background. Background, we've used that to modify colors. So if we do and say, okay, we would like this color to be blue, we say background blue. But that's basically a very general statement. It says, hey, for the background, use blue. Well, here's the catch. There's a lot of ways of defining what a background is. We have background attached, we have background color, background image, background origin. So background is basically the collection of all these sub-properties. So I can define my background to have a specific color, to use a specific image, to have a predefined position. All of these things can be defined. Now, if I am taking a shortcut, I can just say background blue. But if I want to be very explicit and I'm working on a bigger project, I probably have to specify all of those subcategories, all of those sub-properties. That's why when we Google and we found the answer, we had list style type. But then again, when I coded this, I just did list style. That was good enough for me. So I'm not specifying. As a matter of fact, I'm taking away some of the properties. I'm saying don't use any of them. Just set that to none. Great. Now we'll remove that. This example kind of goes away. We don't need that anymore. So now we go list style, inline block, and here we go. So what we've done is we basically changed the behavior of the page. We are now looking at this from the point of view like this will be our header. And again, every time you click, we're going to go and scroll down. So this looks amazing. But this is not the behavior that I would like. At the end of the day, the behavior that I'm looking for, I'm going more for like a Google or your Gmail behavior, where every time you scroll, actually, Google doesn't do it, but like if you're in Gmail, if you scroll, you still have the search bar, you still have all your navigation on the top. That's ultimately what I'm going for. I'm going for a website that has that navigation fixed on the very top. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to just add a few more things to the site, and we're going to do them with the following. So we're going to be getting there in just a minute, but before that, we're also going to add, we're going to talk a little bit more about these subsections. We're going to enhance the way rules, solitaire, and strategy look like, right? Because they're just italics. I mean, they look okay, but they're not my best work. So what I would like to do is I would like to add some pictures to them, right? Add some flair, make sure that they look nice. Because every time I want to show this to my boss, I want to make sure that I'm showing some sort of progress, right? Not just a very static website. So in order to do this, we're going to add another set of images. So let's go back to the files, the master files. So in here, I'm going to say I'm in step 6. If I look inside of the images in step 6, I see that there's a new image. So we have this file that I downloaded from the web. So I'm going to copy this file, drop that right in there. And then we're going to go and use this as a background for our header 2. So we're going to just kind of make that a little bit nicer for everybody to look at. And let's go ahead and get started with this. So here's what we're going to do now. What we're going to do now is we're going to work with the sections. This is the reason why we added the sections. So the sections start for rules, strategy, and solitaire. What we're going to do is we're going to use the section element, and we're going to go ahead and style it. But we're going to style it in a very particular way. The rules, the section element, if you guys are looking at this, the section element will be all the way from right? That will be the entire block. We'll say basically from rules all the way to the top, all the way down to here. What I would like to do is I would like to create a banner that just sits right on top of the name. But I'm going to do this in a very unique way, is that I am going to add an image without adding more elements on the markup. What does that translate to? It means that this file called index.html is going to remain intact for the duration of this step 6. Everything else that I'm going to do is going to be done using CSS. Right, so here's what we'll do. We'll just grab here in the section. So we'll grab this section and we'll use a particular very unique selector called before. So we'll have this section called here, section, and we'll use section dash before. And what this means is that every element that's on the DOM has the ability to have something before and something added after. And what does that translate to, you guys? That translates as the following. We're going to add here an attribute called content, and see what I'm going to do here. I'm just going to write the word hello. Now notice on the website we have the word hello under above solitaire. We have the word hello under above rules, and we have the word, well, we should have had the word hello on top of strategy. Something happened there with the markup. But what we'll do is that this object is a standalone object that's just sitting there. And what we're going to take advantage of is we're going to take advantage of this object that's part of this section, and we're going to go ahead and style it. Let me just go ahead and copy and paste what I have here so you guys can see what the end result of that will look like. And now, of course, you don't want to work. Let's see. Huh? Display block. Not yet. Because the picture is actually above. So the picture is actually showing the picture. It's just the fact that it's not in the right location. So let's see if. No, that's actually the correct part. So here's what we have. We're adding this file, this image, right behind each one of the sections. The thing is that it's currently not being displayed correctly. But the takeaway of this is, did we add any markup to our website? Have we added any image, right? So in comparison to what we did before, we added this one picture, right? And it was a single picture, and it only shows up once on the site. But yet we're referencing another image using CSS and the pseudo selectors here called before, and we see that this picture shows up in rules and also shows up in solitaire, and it should have shown up somewhere else. Here, it should have shown up here in strategies, just that in strategy the tag was never opened correctly. Or so I think. Is it going to show up in strategy? Well, maybe not. I keep refreshing the wrong button. There it is. So the image shows up in strategy, and it also shows up in solitaire. Now, do notice that because we're using CSS, it applies every time we encounter one of these elements. So we're applying the same picture to multiple elements. Now, what does this look like when you keep adding more styling around it? Here's what this looks like. We have a before. And do notice what I mentioned before, we have the C index. This is basically saying, hey, put this picture behind the text. So it actually is going to sit right behind it. Right now, what we're going to do is we're actually going to put like a frosted glass film on top of it. So again, let me do that one more time. See the picture right there? It looks nice and sharp. And then if I add this new piece of code, it kind of shows like there's a frosted glass in front of it. But that's not everything I want to do right now. It's actually, I want to do one more thing. Here is actually, you see the header? This picture is supposed to be part of the header. It's actually going to say, hey, this is a brand new section. This is how I would like the section to look. So we had to fix this because the picture is actually sitting right behind text, and that's not the desired outcome of what we're looking for. So let's look at it from this perspective. And we're like, no, that's not what we're looking for. What we're looking for is for the header to be completely on top of the file. So go ahead and replace this CSS definition and say, this is what it should look like. The title should be of height 200, push everything away, keep the content right underneath, and then just add a brand new picture underneath. And just because of contrast and everything else that we would like to highlight, here's what I would like to do. I would like to just add this kind of frosted glass, so it's just basically like a little accent to the page. What do you guys think? Is it coming along? Is it a little better than Wikipedia, or is Wikipedia still beating me? I don't know. It's a little better, right? It seems to be more of an article. Huh? So yeah, actually look at that a little hack. We're actually embedding images. We're actually creating a brand new object just by adding the after and the before tag using content. Nice thing about it is we're definitely... Sorry, hold on a second. This is my boss and I keep... What? What is the current domain name for 226.10? Yeah, no, I mean, it's not top secret. We're actually we're going to be updating our DNS servers next week. So she's actually in a meeting, and she's asking, and I have no idea what the answer is. I had to Google that. No joke, that's for real. All right, so I think that's basically it, right? We're going down to 4. I mean, so this is what we have. So right now in this one, we have the same picture on all of them. Basically, what I'm doing on step number 7 and moving forward is basically we just keep styling the page over and over again. So in this one, what we'll do is if I just copy exactly what was on 7 from the master, and I just say, well, let's just drop 7 right here. What you'll see is that in version 7, and if we're looking at the live preview, we have the page that looks like this. I'm going to go and zoom out a little bit so you guys can see that same image. On version 7, what we have is that we have different images, right? So we have the header, and each one of the headers has its own little image. Now, how was this done? That's probably the next best question. How was this done? First of all, the markup hasn't changed. So if you go from 6 to 7, you will notice that the markup hasn't really changed. It's still the same thing. All we're doing is we're just playing with CSS. And what I'm saying that we're playing with CSS, it's the following. We're playing with CSS in a way that we're doing a little bit of math. And I know some of you guys, especially those in IT, don't like math. That's what we did IT. That's what we do in IT. Those in engineering are like, math, easy, easy. I got like differential equations, Calc 3, circuits, right? Anybody taking circuits 1, circuits 2? That was fun. Lots of math, lots of partial derivatives in there, lots of good stuff. But again, just reference math in a very, very easy, straightforward fashion here, because we're looking for common elements. If 2 of my CSS rules share the same definitions, like section before and section after, if they both have the exact same definition, I can actually join them and say, hey, this CSS rule is for section before and section after. They both have the exact same attributes: content, position, top, width, height, and C index. And then I go into more detail to say the before has this particular things that only apply to that. And then even further down the line, I tell them, hey, this is the picture that only applies to rules. This is the picture that applies only to solitaire. This is the picture that applies only to strategy. Now, what we're doing is we're basically taking the same basic concepts that we've learned before, but we're starting to apply them a little bit deeper. We're saying, well, we define this in different blocks. We're giving them different classes. We're factoring out the common attributes, and to those who we need to be more specific and more granular, we give them different pictures to each one and every single one of them. What you guys are going to see when you download the entire zip file is that in each one of the steps, a little bit of work has been done. We added the navigation. Eventually, what ends up happening is that the navigation is going to be pinned up on the top. So when you scroll, it says concentration, and each one of the navigation objects is there. We're going to start adding some JavaScript. The JavaScript, it kind of works you all the way into how to define it. We start doing very simple things like, hey, how do you create an on-click event handler? And you start seeing the definition there. It will match something at the bottom of the file. Eventually, all the way to the point that you actually get to play the game. How do you get to play the game? Again, I was showing that at the very beginning of the lecture. That was actually all the way in step 15. Once you load up step 15, this is what we're going to get. So this is the page. Now, why are you loading up like that? That's not how it loads. Terrible demo. What's going on here? I hate when he does that. Like, come on, load up the right way. Okay, doesn't want to load up the right way. But so in step 15, eventually you'll see the board. You'll start like clicking around, and once you find a pair, which apparently I can't seem to. There you go. Once you find the pairs, those will with a little bit of JavaScript, we start changing classes. Eventually, those objects will start showing up. What I promise you guys that I'm going to do, and I'll do this with Jose, maybe we'll just write some comments, and we'll tell you what the difference are between step 1 to 2, from 2 to 3, 3 to 4. That way you guys can see and follow along. Learn maybe a few new tricks. I know it's not your typical kind of workshop. I don't want it to kind of show you the same things that you can learn by yourself if you kind of just Google, hey, how to make a form, how to do this. I want to show you some, some of the more advanced topics like, the selectors and contents before and after tags are more part of CSS3. The elements that we've seen when it comes down to nav and sections are also part of HTML5. And the JavaScript is just basically a very short intro on how to get started and how to, very much towards the end, if you guys are kind of just following a little bit, and again, we'll try to comment this out, will be how to create the deck, how to add special characters into the web. So these are the special HTML codes to create the hearts, diamonds and everything else, all the other shapes, spades, the entire deck, and then eventually how to do loops. I'm sure most of you have taken programming 1, so you know how to iterate through using a for loop, and then eventually how do we interact with the DOM. Basically, we're asking the object, hey, do we have anybody whose class is of type game? If we do, this is how we're going to either add, remove elements, or modify classes using JavaScript. Hopefully, if you can just go all the way from the beginning to end, and you can just sit down and look at the element, at the steps, it'll be clear, what changes have been done. Although we didn't cover everything, I hope that you guys get to look at it, because we spent some really good time on it, making sure that we had enough material in case some of you wanted to go faster. But I think that this was good. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I'm tired. My voice hurts. So we're good. Awesome.
I'll take over the voice now so you can relax yours. Hey, I want to thank you all for coming. Give another round of applause for Professor Gomez.
Yes.
So guys, make sure this is stuff that you can put on your resume, on your own portfolio website. Use this as a template to build your own website and add that as a page to it, because companies love seeing your GitHub filled with stuff. Companies love seeing a website with all the stuff you worked on. And honestly, it's gonna set you apart from a lot of people who are going into the job market in CS, IT, and computer engineering. So make sure to go over through the code. This is the code we have right now. We're gonna be sending a new code later on, a new URL with all the updated steps on it. And right now it's tinyurl.com/webdevzip. Make sure to download it, go through it, finish it, make it your own. Maybe change the pictures a little bit instead of using diamonds, hard to use. Thank you all for coming. Get some more sodas. There's still some chips on that table. I kind of want it gone, so like grab stuff.